Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
This is one of those topics that you don't hear people talk that often about, but it's one that's very powerful. It's a part of life. And when people pass over, what actually happens? And what should you be doing to make that transition to the other side energetically better? She knows a lot about that. We're going to dig a little deeper into that. She's a Reiki master, a teacher, intuitive life coach, clairvoyant medium, and she joins us again today. Joan Widen is with us. Hi, Joan. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. Yeah. So when somebody is about to pass, I know that a lot of people call upon you to, I guess, be the bridge in some way to help that transition take place. When they call you and you're there, with a loved one sometime before a passing, what do you actually do? What takes place at that time?
So what actually takes place is when someone calls me, most times their loved one's spirit is already contacting me. So for example, I had one family call me and say, okay, well, you have to get here as soon as possible because it could be any time. I actually had to tell spirit to stop talking to me so I could actually drive in rush hour traffic to get to see her before she passed. I'm like, okay, if you don't want me to die before I get there, you need to stop showing me everything so I can actually see where I'm driving to. So basically, they're very strong. Their body is still alive. Their spirit is still attached because the body is still alive. And then once I get there, it's more of a smooth transition. So I'm healing to help them transition to the other side. So there is lots of spirits there. So they're people that are waiting to meet them. They are still there. It's quite an amazing experience, but also an experience that's different because death can be a thing that it's hard to witness at the same time, watching the body die. But at the same time, it's, a beautiful experience to witness spiritually because you see all the souls coming there and welcoming them.
Do you feel that when somebody crosses over, that the energy it doesn't go away? It's always here. Their energy is here, even though they may be someplace else, or physically they are. Is it here all the time?
It definitely is here all the time. The only difference is when they actually transition, their energy is way more lighter and it's not, shall we say, kind of tied down to the body, right? And so they're more free, they're more light. It's easy for them to show more things. It's honestly, I just feel like it's just a release for them. And it's a very happy thing.
So is it in line with, let's say, when we ask for a sign or we get signs from, let's say, somebody that has passed over, is it because their energy is here anyway?
Absolutely, right? Our loved ones are always with us and they're omnipresent, right? So they can be here or they could be, in my case, like I have family in the Philippines, so they could be in the Philippines. There is not one specific place where they can be. Again, with energy, there is no time or place, right? It just is.
I've been looking at the metaphysical world for many years and never dug deeper into it other than the past year or two, especially the energy part, and have always believed what you said. And after my mom passed about 3 years ago, it really came clear. I know she's around, and anybody can just say that. I see the signs. I ask for them. I get them. Yeah. I feel it. I can't. And I'm the biggest skeptic on the planet. And I've worked with, people like you, big psychics, everything. And you can't deny when you get a sign and it's so specific. So I have to believe that, yeah, they are around us. Maybe their energies are stronger than others. Let's say you have 2 relatives, 3, whatever passed, but one is standing out more than the other. Why that is, I don't know. Maybe you need them more. I don't have that answer.
That too, but sometimes it's also their personality when they were alive. One stood out more than the other.
I don't doubt that.
Do
when
you
you
know what I
think of
mean?
it.
It's like, oh, wait, no, me first.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You will listen. I'm sending you a
That's right.
signal, and you will listen. It's coming through
Right. Or
now.
you have that belligerent aunt that says, no, you must do this. Listen to me. And
Mhm.
she's still the same way on the other side, right? They always have the opinion.
And that would be that's my mom. So in a completely good way, but I feel that that's probably why she's, if she's dropping a sign to me, it's a reason. You need to see this right now. But that's where, after all these years, where I really felt the presence of, there's an energy there, and I truly believe, like you say, that th- people that pass over, the energy is here. It's everywhere around us. You can't, it doesn't know time, space, crossing over, in the body, out of the body. The energy is around.
Absolutely, right? Like even just how our heart beats, it's an energy, right? How do
Hmm.
we really explain that? That we have a current within our body and it makes our heart beat. It just is.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because that really just illustrates everything right there. Everything we use, everything that's around us,
Yep.
we have to, as batteries, you charge it, plug it into the wall. It's energy.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your heart, which is powering everything in your body,
Correct.
why is that going? What's keeping that going?
Right. And
Energy.
it's energy, right?
It's
And that's
energy.
how the energy has to flow. And if the energy isn't flowing, you know, it affects our heart.
Yeah.
And then it affects everything else because the heart is the central hub.
So as a clairvoyant, what are some of the things that you get? I find this fascinating. So, I just, even recently, that you've gotten from somebody, when you get sign signals, what do you hear? What do you sense?
I'm not, so I'm not quite sure what you're
Like,
asking.
when you're picking up the energy of somebody that may have passed over, and
Okay.
somebody like you that's really in tune to it, what are you getting? Is it like a spirit guide? Are you feeling somebody's presence? What do you
So,
experience?
so most of the time I feel their presence, and then especially if they're transitioning, they just are talking a mile a minute because they think they only have a
Limited
certain
time?
amount of time, right? Because
Wow.
their body is still alive. And I go, okay, well, wait, you need to slow down. Like this is not a 5 minute window thing. You can just take your time and show me properly instead of, the mentality still is, I only have so many minutes left because I'm dying, right? And so I feel it in my body. So they sometimes show me, and they show me in their body where, like if they had a sickness, where it is, just because maybe the family members wanted me to give some, what's it called, clarification, to make sure that really is them and not someone else. Right.
Hmm.
And or they tell me why, like that, if they knew it was coming or if it wasn't. Right. So that one, for example, she showed me a rug getting pulled out from underneath her, so she was not expecting it. It was very quick.
Hmm.
Right. And then, so as I was giving her energy to help the body ease, because at this time the body was laboring, right? And watching a body labor can be quite daunting for some people. Um, it was just, and then her body just started slowly calming down instead of the deep gaspings for air and everything coming through. And it was quite interesting because she was talking about certain things that her family and her daughters, that they had just fought about and that they had issues about, and she wanted to make sure that she was all good, and she was, that everything, the air was clear before she passed.
Interesting, because I've never heard that done with a clairvoyant medium before somebody passes. So it's basic. She's clearing the air before,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times it's closure when somebody has passed on, where somebody, you might get a signal or message from somebody to say that, they're sorry for something they said, or something around that line.
Absolutely, right. And this
Hmm.
one, For like she was saying, I'm like, oh, you have a piece of jewelry that there's an issue with, and you don't know if you're allowed to keep it or if you should give it to your sister or all this different things. And she's like, no, I gave it to you. And I know even though we were arguing and I said mean things, I still want you to have it and it's still yours. And then she pulled it out of her pocket and said, is this it? And I said, yes.
Wow.
So, so
Like,
even
that's
upon
cool.
dying, there's still people that are skeptic and they still have these things,
Do you
right?
do you physically have to be in the room with the person that's passing soon?
I do not, because I can still tap in. That one, I'm going to tell you, was the very first time I had been in the room, and it was quite an experience. Again, I thought the room was full of people, of loved ones, but when I got there, there were only 3 people. There were the 2 sisters and then the nurse. But I thought it was a huge amount of people and I thought it was going to be really crowded. But then I realized as soon as I walked in that it was all the spirits and all her coming forward to come greet her.
Wow. So
Yeah.
these are people that passed before her?
Yes, that were connected to her in some way, right?
Mm.
They didn't show me any faces and she didn't ask for any of those, right? It it really was just about, for the family, was helping her body not labor so much so that her body could just die more peacefully, instead of, like I said, if you've ever seen anyone pass, it can be quite
Yeah.
some scary for some. Like if a child was there, it would be very scary
Yeah. And it
just
kind
because the body's gasping.
yeah, and depends on the situation as well. Um, and how awake that person is too. Um, so it's almost before the final resting place, you put that person at rest.
That's correct, right? So they are no longer, they were in a hospice, so they were no longer lucid. They had not been lucid for about a week,
Mm.
right? So they had not woken up and spoken for about a week. And so they, the one sister wanted to have a priest do her last rites. So the priest had just left, and then the other sister was like, well, if you get a priest, I want this. So then they had me come in, and then I did that. And she was quite forthcoming, the what was it, the mother, and she told me a lot of things. They were able to settle down a lot of things between the 2 sisters in the room before she passed. And
Mm.
and then what was it, and then the doctor walked in, and then she goes, okay, now you need to get out. Well, she said, she put a cuss word in there, but she said, now you need to get out. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I was just finishing up anyway. She goes, no, get out. And I'm like, all right. This is the mother that's laying dying. And she goes, the hot doctor is here. You need to get out so I can enjoy my moment with the hot doctor before I die.
All right. So this is the message that you got from mom that
Yeah.
wow. Wow.
So then I told the kids that, and they're like, oh my God, that's totally my mom, because that doctor is totally his type,
Mm.
her type. And so, wow, okay. And I'm like, okay, well, that being said, I need to get out of here because otherwise she's going to bug me about staying.
Okay, so that brings up a thought. Do, do things follow you? Like, let's just say I'm not leaving. She wants me to leave Hot Doctor in here, but I'm not. I got things to do and talk about. Could her spirit follow you past that day and say, "I told you to leave. I wanted you to leave at that time, and you didn't." Is that possible? Has it ever happened?
It has actually, that lady, she did. And I'm like, okay, well, we
Wow.
went through a ton of stuff that day. Um, if you want your kids or your daughter to talk to me again, they know my number. You have to get them to contact me. I'm like, I'm not going to contact them and say, oh, by the way, all this stuff. I'm like, that's not how this works. If you want them to talk to me, you go you haunt them, not me.
Mm.
Right. And I also set boundaries and I say, okay, from this time to this time, I don't want to be bothered. Right. So please don't come walking, and saying, oh, like if I'm walking past someone, I need to tell you this. And I'm like, no, I don't, I'm not that kind of person.
I'm
So I
off.
just don't, I'm off.
Yeah.
I'm off. When I'm with my kids, I'm off. Unless it's like, so it's kind of like, that movie Ghost, where
Hmm.
he's like, I'm going to just sit here and tell you, so he sang until it's kind of, unless it was something like that and they just wouldn't relentlessly leave. But for the most part, it's no, I told you to leave. Just like someone that came to your house, if you didn't want them to be here, you would just tell them to leave and they would leave.
Hmm. I'm getting more different views of all of this that I never knew existed. So has it ever been okay? So here's my question. I've always heard that if you're going to connect with somebody energetically,
Yeah.
that you need to have their permission. So now we have somebody that's not lucid.
Okay.
How do you get the permission of that person to allow you to tap into their energy?
That's a great question, because their daughters contacted me. Actually, the social worker had contacted me. So I had no clue who this person was, but she already started talking to me as soon as the daughter said yes.
Hmm.
So it was almost like her children gave her the permission to come and talk to me already. Do you know what I mean? I had no clue who she was. I didn't know her name. I didn't
Wow.
know her age. All I knew is she was in a hospice and her body, she was dying imminently. And if I could drive as fast as I could to try and do that in
Wow.
rush hour traffic. So
Unbelievable.
yeah.
How far away was that from you?
That was about, typically it would have only been 15 minutes, but I think it was about half an hour to 40 minutes because it was rush hour traffic and she was downtown, close to downtown.
Gotcha. Okay. I have
Right.
to a confession in all the time that we've talked. You're in Canada.
Yeah.
Um, the first time ever I even had an indication you were was just now when it was about. I would have never known. I don't know. And
Oh,
not that it matters, but people, I'm from New York. So people are like, yeah,
a boot.
a boat. Thank you.
Oh,
I don't, I get the, how come you don't sound like New York? Come on, talk like
oh,
that. It's like sometimes it comes out, but yours just did. It was actually kind of funny. Is she really from Canada? Because I'm not hearing anything else. And how long you been in Canada?
I have been in Canada for 48 and a half years.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow. All
I
right.
just aged myself.
Would have never known. I would have never known from looking at you or your about. I would think your about would be stronger than that. Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everyone's like, you don't have an accent. I'm like, Canadians don't. But I don't
Well,
know. But
New Yorkers don't either. It depends on where you're from.
that's true.
Yeah. Fascinating. So if somebody wants to work with you, even if they have a relative that may be passing at some point and they're thinking about making it easier and having that clarity, or even Reiki, you do Reiki as well and so much
Absolutely.
more. Yeah, they just check you out on your website.
Absolutely. Or you can give me a shout at 403-889-9088. It's a very easy number.
Hmm.
You can text me at that, actually, would be best.
Gotcha. And when it comes to Reiki, that of course that can be done virtually, right?
Absolutely. Again, how Reiki works is I use my body visually, and then I ask them to show me in my body. So then I start doing hand positions over my body and scanning my body, because now my body becomes theirs.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. I know somebody that does Reiki and they have like a stuffed doll. It's like a little dog
Yes.
or something like that, and that's
You
where
can do that too.
yeah, it's just everybody's got their own way of doing it. There's no right or wrong way. It's just a transfer of energy. Uh, just
I
had a thought.
also,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. I also have a picture of a body on a piece of paper, so that if I want to add crystal healing to it, then I just lay it on the paper.
Would you ever do Reiki to somebody who's going to pass soon?
Yes, actually, because sometimes healing is not necessarily just healing to get better and live on this earth. Healing can also mean they need is death, and it's the transition of dying is the healing. Does that it's quite an interesting thing.
Yeah. And would it get you ready for the other side if you did Reiki, prior to passing, or, in your final month or whatever?
Absolutely, because then it helps you relieve some of that fear
Mm,
and help you get through some of the crap that we still have, right? And that you're able to let go of that, at least let go of it as much as you want to. Because, I can only lead you to it, but unless you're willing to drop it, it is there, right? So sometimes people want to release anger. And sometimes when they're almost dying, they actually get a little bit longer because they've let go of all that baggage. Does
oh,
that
so
make
they,
sense?
yeah. So what you're saying is they would live longer,
Yeah,
potentially, because
potentially.
they've released a lot that's been
That's
burdening
correct.
them. And let's be honest, research proves that stress kills. So if you are, and could probably take you sooner if you're all stressed out about something, and the one thing that you just said was so powerful in doing Reiki on somebody before they pass is not feeling the fear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Because it just shows them that they can see the other side too, right?
Yeah.
And that people are willing. And um, I'm going to tell you, a lot of people at the moments of before death, it's all about judgments. And it's really them judging them because the universe doesn't have the judgments that we place on ourselves.
Yep.
And so in those moments prior to passing, they're going, but I did this, I stole this, I hurt this person, or I was an abusive person, or do you know what I mean? All
Yeah.
these things that are coming up. And then they're going, oh my goodness, now my fear is huge because what's going to be on the other side? Is it going to be a whole bunch of darkness and they're going to pull me into the earth and a whole bunch of monsters are going to come get me? Do you know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's more of, okay, well, let's release all of those. Let's say sorry for all of those. It's not too late to say sorry, right? Maybe it's too late to actually call people, but that's okay. You could say sorry to the spirit and start living today and
Yeah.
changing your ways today
I
instead
think
of
that's
holding on to that.
so amazing. And even if you want someone to forgive you or the other way around, it's all about energy. So if
Absolutely.
you can put that out there, but if you're so, and rightfully so, you think you're going to pass, or you're going to pass in a period of time. There's so much going on in your mind that Reiki would probably be the best thing you ever do. It's just to take that burden off of you and make you feel more comfortable at that moment.
Right.
Wow.
And a lot of time is really is just showing them, yeah, I see it, but can you honor that part of you? Can you honor that time when you weren't the nicest? Can you honor yourself for that? And a lot of people, they're like, but I can't because I was so mean and so horrible. And I
Mm,
said, but you know what? What were you going through at that moment? Is there a time where, you just weren't happy yourself and that's why you pushed it out? I said, we have to look at that. And you also have to say, I'm sorry to yourself, because just because you were that way then doesn't mean you still are today. And it's
yeah.
time to just release it. It's
Release is the
quite,
great, that's the best word.
yeah,
Release it. Yeah. And having had Reiki before we met, with other practitioners, um, it works. So I can't imagine if somebody's, about to pass and that's weighing on their mind as it would, how beneficial that would be at the same time. I mean, Reiki's for living and not, so it sounds like.
absolutely. So
Hmm.
again, here's a different story. Um, I had one where the sisters wanted me to help transition their brother. Well, as soon as I got there, I'm like, he's not even close, right? To passing. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. So I come in, and the first thing I say to him was, you need to relax because I cannot make you die, and no one's going to make you die today. And he just looked at me and was like, thank you, right?
Hmm.
Because he thought that his sisters hired me to cross him over that day.
Wow.
And I just
Okay.
said, I can't do that. I said, I don't have that power. I said, that is, you have your individual free will, and that is you, and it's up to you. I said, you will die the way you want to die. And then I did Reiki a couple times for him. I think he actually lived another 6 months. And he did, he decided in the end that he wanted to pass from doctor-assisted suicide.
Okay.
But
Wow.
that was, that was his choice. And because he had an inoperable brain tumor,
Right.
really.
But
Yeah.
what a difference, though, 6 months later,
Mhm.
he continued to live thinking, you're the Grim Reaper. Joan is the
Right.
Reaper coming in. But no,
Right.
quite the opposite, to make you feel better and feel alive. It's funny, before we started on today, we both were looking at each other like, well, this is not the happiest of topics, but it's real and it's life.
It's real. It is life.
Yeah.
Yes,
So your website is your name, right?
that's correct. JoanWiden.com.
And it's Widen.
Correct.
Yeah. What about consultations? If somebody wants to see if it's a right fit, learn a little bit more, you do that too?
Absolutely. Just shoot me a text and then we'll figure out a time where we can have a short consultation. And then we'll go from there. So 403-889-9088.
Great talking with you.
Great. Thank you.
And is that a fireplace in your background?
Absolutely.
Last night, I've got one that almost looks just like that. Last night was the first night I finally turned it on because it's getting a little colder here in the New York area. I got to ask, what's your Fahrenheit temperature there right now?
See, I checked before we came on air. It's 47.
Oh, wow. All right. About the same temperature here, but I think last time we talked, it was like brutally cold.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
So in a week, it will be minus 22 Fahrenheit.
You're going to need that fireplace. All
right. So today we have a Chinook, and so it's really beautiful.
Yep. Take that and enjoy it. And that goes with life in general, right?
Absolutely.
All right, Joan, great talking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.